I never thought watching the man I loved aim a gun at my half-brother would be the moment I understood what jealousy really looked like. But there I was, standing in a warehouse with my heart beating so loud I swore they could both hear it, watching Dominic Castellano's finger hover over the trigger while Victor smirked like he'd already won. 6 months earlier, I would have laughed if you told me I'd fall for a mafia boss. Me, Isadora Gray, the girl who kept her head down, who survived by being invisible. But Dominic didn't let me stay invisible. He saw me in ways that terrified me, in ways that made me want things I had no right wanting. Let me take you back to where it all started. Back to the day I walked into his mansion thinking I was just there to manage his estate. Back before I knew that working for Dominic Castellano meant he'd own every thought in my head, every skip of my heartbeat. Back before everything went to hell. The marble floors of the Castellano estate were so polished I could see my reflection, and I remember thinking that was the point. Everything in Dominic's world reflected back at you, forced you to look at yourself, forced you to see what you were becoming. My first day, I wore a black pencil skirt and white blouse. Professional, boring, forgettable. That's what I needed to be. Forgettable. His head of security, a man named Rocco with a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw, walked me through the West Wing. Mr. Castellano doesn't like mistakes, he said, his voice flat. He doesn't like excuses. He likes things done right the first time. Understood, I replied, gripping my leather portfolio tighter. What Rocco didn't mention was that Dominic Castellano liked to watch. I felt his eyes on me before I ever saw him. It was late afternoon, sun pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the main corridor, and I was reviewing the household inventory on my tablet when this electric current ran down my spine. You know that feeling when someone's staring at you? When the air itself changes? I looked up. He stood at the top of the grand staircase, one hand resting on the banister, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. But it wasn't the suit that made my breath catch. It was his eyes, dark, intense, looking at me like I was a puzzle he needed to solve. Not a person, a puzzle. I should have run right then. Instead, I nodded politely and went back to my tablet, pretending my hands weren't shaking, pretending I couldn't still feel the weight of his stare even after I heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway. That became our routine. He'd find reasons to call me to his office, questions about the wine cellar temperature, concerns about the security system, complaints about the thread count on his sheets that were absolutely fine. Each time, he'd lean back in his leather chair, fingers steepled, watching me like I was the most fascinating thing he'd encountered in years. "You're very efficient, Miss Gray," he said during week 2, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. "Thank you, Mr. Castellano." "Dominic," he corrected. "Call me Dominic." I didn't. I kept that wall up, kept calling him Mr. Castellano, kept my answers short and professional, because I could feel what was building between us, and I knew, God, I knew, that letting it happen would destroy everything. The other staff noticed. Maria, the head cook, pulled me aside one morning while I was checking the kitchen inventory. "He's never paid this much attention to anyone," she whispered, her eyes concerned. "Be careful, mija. Men like him don't know how to want something without consuming it." I told myself she was wrong. I told myself I was just doing my job well, that his interest was purely professional. I was lying to myself, and somewhere deep down, I knew it. By month 3, I'd catch him watching me through security camera feeds on his office monitors. I'd turn a corner and find him there, like he'd memorized my schedule, my routes through the house. Once, I bent down to pick up a dropped pen, and when I straightened, he was standing in the doorway, his jaw tight, his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Is there something you need, Mr. Castellano?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He stared at me for a long moment, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "No," he finally said, "nothing at all." But we both knew that was a lie too. The tension between us felt like a living thing, growing stronger every day. I'd catch myself thinking about him when I shouldn't, while driving home, while lying in bed at night, while standing in my tiny apartment that felt even smaller after spending all day in his mansion. Have you ever wanted someone you knew you couldn't have? Someone who represented everything you should stay away from? That was my every waking moment. Then my phone started ringing at night. The first time, I was getting ready for bed when it buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is it done?" a man's voice asked, cold, demanding. "Yes," I whispered, my stomach dropping. "Next week. I'll have more information next week." I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. That's when I started leaving the estate late at night, changing into dresses I kept hidden in my car, driving to places I'd never mentioned to anyone. That's when my double life really began. And that's when Dominic's jealousy started to show. I made the mistake of smiling at my phone one afternoon while standing in his library. Just a small smile, barely there, at a message I'd received. When I looked up, Dominic was in the doorway, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Excuse me?" "Whoever makes you smile like that." He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne, cedar, and smoke. "You never smile at me like that." My heart was racing. "Mr. Castellano, I don't think you're seeing someone." It wasn't a question. His eyes searched my face, looking for confirmation, looking for something to confirm whatever story he'd built in his head. "That's why you leave so late. Why you're always on your phone. Why you won't let me—" He stopped himself, his jaw clenching. "Why I won't let you what?" I asked quietly. But he just shook his head and walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart in my throat and the weight of all my secrets pressing down on my chest. I should have told him the truth then. I should have explained everything. About Victor, about Celeste, about why I was really there. But I was terrified. Terrified of losing the one person who made me feel alive, even though getting close to him could get us both killed. So I kept my distance. I kept my secrets. I kept lying to both of us about what was growing between us. And Dominic? He started watching me even more closely. I'd see his car parked down the street from my apartment. I'd notice Rocco following me to the grocery store. Once I came out of the pharmacy and found Dominic himself leaning against his black Mercedes, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You're having me followed?" I asked, angry and terrified, and something else I didn't want to name. "I'm making sure you're safe," he replied, like that was a normal thing to say. "This city is dangerous, Miss Gray. You should be more careful about where you go at night." The way he said it, like he knew, like he'd already been following me and had seen things he wasn't supposed to see. That night, I made a decision. I'd go out like I always did, but this time, I'd be watching for him. This time, I'd see if he followed me all the way. What I didn't know was that where I was going would change everything between us forever. The black dress felt like armor as I slipped it on in the back seat of my car, parked 3 blocks from the estate. I'd gotten good at these quick changes, efficient movements, no wasted time. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, applied dark lipstick, and let my hair down from its usual tight bun. This version of me didn't exist in Dominic's world. This Isadora was free, untouchable, alive. Or so I told myself. The Pearl was a jazz club buried deep in the warehouse district, the kind of place you only found if you were looking for it. Red velvet curtains covered the entrance, and you had to knock 3 times, pause, then twice more to get in. Inside, it smelled like cigarette smoke and expensive perfume, and the stage lights cast everything in shades of gold and shadow. This was my sanctuary, the only place where I could breathe. I didn't see Dominic when I arrived, didn't sense him in the crowd or feel his eyes on me like I usually did. For once, I thought maybe I'd been paranoid. Maybe he hadn't followed me after all. I was wrong. He was there, tucked into a corner booth in the back, wearing a baseball cap pulled low and a dark jacket I'd never seen him in before. Later, he'd tell me he'd been there for weeks, watching me perform, falling in love with the version of me he thought I'd been hiding from him. But that night, I had no idea. I climbed onto that stage thinking I was alone, thinking I was safe. The piano player started, those first slow notes that always made my chest tight, and I closed my eyes and let the music take me. When I sang, I wasn't Isadora Gray, estate manager, spy, sister, liar. I was just a voice in the darkness, telling truths I couldn't speak anywhere else. The song was about longing, about wanting someone you couldn't have, about the particular kind of pain that comes from loving the wrong person. I sang every word thinking about Dominic. The crowd was quiet when I finished, that perfect silence that means you've reached them. Then the applause came, washing over me like a wave, and I opened my eyes to see faces I recognized, regulars who'd been coming to hear me for months now. That's when I felt it again, that electric current down my spine. I scanned the crowd, searching, but the lights were too bright. I couldn't see past the first few rows. Still, I knew. Somehow, I knew he was there. The owner, Marcus, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, handed me a glass of water as I stepped off stage. "Beautiful as always, Izzy. You've got someone waiting for you, by the way." "Corner booth." My heart stopped. "Who?" But Marcus just smiled and walked away, leaving me standing there with my pulse racing and my mind screaming at me to run. I didn't run. I never did, even when I should have. I made my way through the crowd, smiling at people who congratulated me, accepting compliments while my whole body felt like it was vibrating with nerves. When I finally reached the corner, the booth was empty, just a half-finished drink and a napkin with 2 words written on it in sharp, angular handwriting. "You're magnificent." I recognized the handwriting. I'd seen it on notes left for me at the estate, on instructions, on the personal letters he'd write instead of sending emails. Dominic had been here, had watched me, had seen this part of me I'd tried so desperately to keep hidden. My hands started shaking. "Isadora." The voice came from behind me, and I froze. Not Dominic's voice. Another voice I knew too well, one that made my blood run cold and hot all at once. I turned slowly. Victor Romanov stood there in a tailored suit, his pale eyes calculating, his mouth curved in that smile that never reached his eyes. My half-brother, my blackmailer, the man who held my sister's life in his hands. "We need to talk," he said quietly, gesturing to the booth. I sat because I had no choice, because this was the dance we'd been doing for months. Him pulling the strings, me performing exactly as he wanted. He slid in across from me, too close, too comfortable. "You've been holding back information," he said conversationally, like we were discussing the weather. "Dominic Castellano's security protocols, his business partners, his weaknesses. I'm starting to wonder whose side you're really on, little sister." "You have Celeste," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm on whatever side keeps her alive. You know that." "Do I?" He leaned forward, and I could smell his cologne, something sharp and chemical that always made me nauseous. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're getting awfully comfortable in Dominic's world, awfully close to him." "I'm doing exactly what you asked. Getting close, gaining his trust." "Too close," Victor interrupted, his eyes hardening. "I don't need you falling in love with my enemy, Isadora. I need you to destroy him." The words hit me like a physical blow, because he was right. I was falling in love with Dominic, had maybe already fallen, and every day it got harder to remember why I was supposed to betray him. Victor reached across the table and took my hand, his grip just tight enough to hurt. To anyone watching, it might have looked affectionate, brotherly. They couldn't see the threat in his eyes, couldn't hear the venom under his smooth tone. "Next week," he said, "I need the access codes to his private servers. And Isadora, if you fail me again, Celeste pays the price. Do we understand each other?" I nodded, hating myself, hating him, hating this entire situation I'd been trapped in since the day Victor showed up and revealed the truth about our family. He lifted my hand to his lips and kissed it, a gesture that made my skin crawl, but that I had to accept, had to pretend was normal. That's when I felt it again. That awareness, that electricity. I looked past Victor's shoulder, scanning the crowd, and that's when I saw him. Dominic stood near the bar, the baseball cap gone, his face fully visible now. And the expression on his face. God, the expression on his face made my blood freeze. Pure rage, betrayal, pain. He'd seen Victor kiss my hand, seen us sitting together, intimate and close. And he had no idea that the man he was looking at was his worst enemy, the one who'd killed his brother, the one who'd been trying to destroy him for years. All Dominic saw was the man he thought I was choosing over him. Our eyes met across the crowded club. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The music, the people, even Victor sitting across from me. There was just Dominic and me and the shattering of whatever fragile thing had been building between us. Then he turned and walked out, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Was that him?" Victor asked, amusement in his voice. "Your mafia boss?" "Oh, Isadora, this is better than I could have hoped. He's in love with you, isn't he? This just got so much more interesting." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because I knew that everything was about to explode, that I'd just lost something I didn't even realize I'd claimed. That tomorrow, when I showed up at the estate, Dominic would either fire me or confront me, and either way, the careful balance I'd been maintaining was about to come crashing down. Victor stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Next week, Isadora. Don't forget, Celeste is counting on you." He left, and I sat there alone in the booth, staring at the napkin with Dominic's handwriting, those two words that now felt like a goodbye. "You're magnificent." I'd never felt less magnificent in my entire life. I felt like a fraud, a liar, a woman caught between two worlds with no idea how to survive in either one. I drove home that night with tears streaming down my face, knowing that when the sun came up, I'd have to face the man I loved and somehow explain the unexplainable. What I didn't know was that Dominic wasn't planning to wait until morning, that he was already planning the confrontation that would force all my secrets into the light, that by tomorrow afternoon, he'd know everything, and I'd have to choose between saving my sister or saving myself. I didn't sleep that night, just lay in my tiny apartment staring at the ceiling, rehearsing conversations that would never go the way I planned them. By the time the sun came up, I'd convinced myself maybe Dominic hadn't actually seen anything. Maybe he'd left for some other reason. Maybe I could still salvage this. I was delusional. The moment I walked through the service entrance of the estate, Rocco was waiting. His expression told me everything I needed to know. "He wants to see you," Rocco said. No greeting, no warmth. "Now." His office. My legs felt like water as I climbed those stairs. Every step echoed too loud in the empty hallway. It was barely 7 in the morning. The rest of the staff wouldn't arrive for another hour. He'd planned this. Wanted us alone. The office door was open. Dominic stood with his back to me, staring out the massive window that overlooked the grounds, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He'd been wearing the same clothes from last night. Hadn't slept either, from the looks of it. "Close the door," he said without turning around. I did, my heart hammering so hard I felt dizzy. The silence stretched out, painful and suffocating. Finally, he turned to face me, and the look in his eyes, I'd never seen him like this. Raw, wounded, furious. "How long?" His voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. "Mr. Castellano." "How long have you been lying to me, Isadora?" He moved closer, and I backed up until I hit the door. "How long have you been sneaking out to meet him? How long have you been playing me like a fool?" "You don't understand. Then make me understand." His hand slammed against the door beside my head, making me flinch. "I followed you last night. I watched you sing. God, I watched you, and you were so beautiful it hurt. And then I watched him touch you. Watched you let him kiss your hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. So please, Isadora, help me understand." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I forced them back. "Who did you see me with?" "Don't." His jaw clenched. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know. Tell me who you think you saw. Something in my tone must have registered because his eyes narrowed. Tall, blonde, expensive suit. The way he looked at you, like he owned you. Victor. He'd seen Victor and had no idea. This was my moment. The choice I'd been avoiding for 6 months was right here, unavoidable, staring me in the face with Dominic's dark eyes. Tell him the truth and risk Celeste's life. Stay silent and lose him forever. Have you ever had to choose between two people you love? Between saving one and destroying another? That's where I stood, and I had about 5 seconds to decide. That man, I said slowly, my voice shaking, is Victor Romanoff. I watched the name hit him like a bullet. His whole body went rigid, his face draining of color before flooding with rage so intense I actually pressed myself harder against the door. You're lying. But his voice cracked on the words. I wish I was. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. Victor Romanoff is my half-brother, my mother's secret from before she met my father. I didn't know he existed until 6 months ago. Dominic stared at me like I was speaking another language. Victor Romanoff, the man who killed my brother, the man I've been hunting for 3 years. That Victor Romanoff is your brother, and you just forgot to mention it? I couldn't tell you. Couldn't or wouldn't. He backed away from me, running his hands through his hair like he wanted to rip it out. Jesus Christ, Isadora. Do you have any idea what you've done? What this means? He has my sister! The words exploded out of me, loud and desperate. He has Celeste, and he's been holding her hostage for months, forcing me to spy on you, to get information, to what? Dominic's voice went deadly quiet. To destroy me from the inside? To get close to me? Make me trust you? Make me... He stopped himself, jaw working. Make him fall in love with me. That's what he couldn't say. I've been feeding him false information, I said quickly, desperately. Every single thing I've given Victor has been a lie. I've been documenting everything, his operations, his connections, his crimes. I have evidence, Dominic, months of evidence. I was trying to find a way to bring him down and save Celeste. But I needed time. You needed to use me. He laughed, bitter and harsh. You needed access to my resources, my connections. That's what this was. That's what I was to you. No. I moved toward him, but he held up a hand, stopping me cold. Don't come near me right now. The look on his face shattered something inside me, because I could see it, the exact moment he locked me out, the moment he rebuilt those walls I'd spent months carefully dismantling. I fell in love with you, I whispered, the truth I'd been hiding even from myself finally breaking free. I wasn't supposed to. I tried not to. But every day I spent here, every moment I watched you, listened to you, saw the man you are underneath everything else. I fell completely in love with you, Dominic, and that's why I kept my distance. That's why I couldn't tell you, because I knew if I let myself get too close, I'd never be able to do what needed to be done to save Celeste. He stood frozen, his expression unreadable now. The anger had drained away, leaving something worse, something that looked like grief. You should have told me, he said finally, his voice hollow. The first day, the first moment. You should have trusted me. You would have killed Victor, and then Celeste would be dead too. So instead, you chose to betray me every single day, to sleep under my roof, work in my home, let me fall for you while you were working with the man who murdered my brother. I wasn't working with him. You're his sister, his blood, and you've been lying to me for 6 months. Dominic moved to his desk, putting distance between us, putting everything between us. I want you out. Pack your things and get out of my house. The words hit me like a physical blow. Dominic, please what? He finally looked at me again, and the pain in his eyes made my chest tight. Please forgive you. Please understand. Please ignore the fact that you're connected to the man I hate more than anyone on this planet. The man I've sworn to destroy? Tell me, Isadora, what exactly am I supposed to do here? I didn't have an answer, because he was right about all of it. What if we work together? The words came out small, desperate. What if I helped you take down Victor? I have information, evidence, access. Why would I ever trust you again? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unanswerable. Because I'm choosing you, I said quietly. Right now, in this moment, I'm choosing you over Victor, over everything. I'm giving you all the evidence I have. I'm telling you where Celeste is being held. I'm handing you everything you need to destroy him, even though it might cost me my sister's life. Because you're right. I should have trusted you from the beginning, so I'm trusting you now. Please, Dominic. Please let me help you end this. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I could see the war happening behind his eyes, rage fighting with something softer, betrayal fighting with the feelings he couldn't quite kill. Finally, he spoke. If I agree to this, it's not because I forgive you. It's not because I trust you. It's because Victor Romanoff has been a poison in my life for too long. And if you can help me cut it out, I'll use you the same way you used me. Do we understand each other? The words hurt, but I nodded. Yes. Then show me. Show me this evidence. Show me where your sister is. And Isadora? His eyes went cold. If this is another lie, if this is some elaborate trap, I won't just throw you out. I'll make sure you regret ever walking into my life. I believed him, and somehow that made me love him even more. The fact that he could be this hurt, this angry, and still be willing to try, still be willing to fight for something, even if it wasn't for me anymore. I'll get everything, I said. Give me 2 hours. He nodded once, dismissing me, and I left his office feeling like I'd just burned down my entire world. What I didn't know was that this was just the beginning, that the next 48 hours would test both of us in ways we couldn't imagine, that working together would either save us both or destroy whatever fragments remained of what we'd had. Are you enjoying the story? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love to hear from you. I spread 6 months of evidence across Dominic's conference table like I was laying out my soul for inspection. Bank records, surveillance photos, audio recordings on 3 separate burner phones, detailed notes about Victor's operations written in my own hand, hidden in notebooks I'd kept under my mattress. Dominic stood at the window, his back to me, silent while I arranged everything. Rocco was there too, arms crossed, watching me like I was a bomb that might explode. Victor moves his operation every 6 weeks, I said, my voice steady, even though my hands weren't. He's been using a network of shell corporations to launder money through art galleries and high-end restaurants. The current location is a warehouse in Red Hook. That's where he's holding Celeste. Dominic finally turned. His eyes were bloodshot, his tie loosened. He looked like hell, and I knew I'd put that exhaustion there. How do you know she's still alive? His tone was flat, professional. This wasn't the man who'd watched me sing. This was the Mafia boss, cold and calculating. He sends me proof of life every week. Photos, videos. The last one was 2 days ago. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the video, and slid it across the table. Dominic watched it, his expression giving nothing away. On the screen, Celeste sat in a concrete room, holding today's newspaper, her eyes red from crying. She was 19. Just a kid. And this was my fault. I'd brought Victor into our lives by trying to find our mother's family, by being curious about roots I should have left buried. She looks like you, Dominic said quietly. She's better than me, smarter, kinder. She got into Columbia on a full scholarship before Victor took her. She was supposed to start this fall. My voice cracked. She was supposed to have a normal life. Rocco picked up one of the notebooks, flipping through pages of my handwriting. This is detailed, very detailed. Names, dates, transaction amounts. If this is real... It's real, I interrupted. Every word. I've been building a case against him for months. I just didn't know who to give it to. The police are half on his payroll, the FBI has leaks, and I couldn't risk Celeste's life on a maybe. Dominic moved to the table, finally engaging with the evidence. He picked up a surveillance photo, Victor meeting with a city councilman outside an expensive restaurant. Councilman Rhodes, Dominic said. I knew he was dirty, but I couldn't prove it. Victor owns him, paid for his campaign, covers his gambling debts. Rhodes pushes through zoning changes for Victor's real estate developments. I pointed to another photo. That's Judge Martinez. Victor has videos of him with underage girls, keeps him in line for whenever he needs charges dropped. I watched Dominic's expression shift as he went through everything. The anger was still there, but something else was emerging. Focus. Recognition that what I'd given him was valuable, maybe invaluable. Why? He asked suddenly, looking up at me. Why go through all this trouble? Why not just give Victor what he wanted and keep your sister safe? This was the question I'd been dreading, because the answer made me vulnerable in ways I couldn't afford. Because I couldn't let him hurt you, I said quietly. Even before I admitted I loved you, I couldn't stomach the idea of being the weapon he used to destroy you. So I fed him garbage. Old security codes, fake business partner names, information that sounded good but was useless. And every real thing I learned, I documented. I told myself that eventually, I'd find a way to use it, that somehow I'd save Celeste and stop Victor and maybe... I stopped, my throat tight. Maybe what? Dominic's voice was softer now, careful. Maybe keep you safe too. All of you. Even though that was impossible. Even though wanting that was the most selfish thing I could do. Rocco cleared his throat. Boss, if this intel is solid, we could move on Victor tonight. Hit him fast, extract the girl, bring the whole organization down before he knows what's happening. No, I said immediately. He has fail-safes. If anything happens to him without warning, if his security team can't reach him, they're under orders to kill Celeste immediately. We need to be smarter than that. Dominic studied me, and I could see him processing, calculating. What do you suggest? Use me, I said. I'm supposed to meet with him tomorrow night to hand over the security codes he wants. Let me go to that meeting. Let me wear a wire. Feed him something convincing while your team positions around the warehouse. Once you have eyes on Celeste, once you can guarantee her extraction, then we move. Absolutely not, Dominic said immediately. If he suspects anything, he won't. He thinks he has me completely under control. He thinks I'm terrified of him, that I'd never risk Celeste's life. And he's right, I am terrified. But I'm more terrified of doing nothing and watching him destroy both of you. Both of us. Dominic's eyes narrowed. I took a breath, steadying myself for the next part. Victor doesn't just want your business, Dominic. He wants you dead. That's the endgame. Once he has enough information about your operations, your people, your vulnerabilities, he's planning to kill you and take everything you've built. He's been planning it for months. Revenge for you taking territory he thought was his, for being better than him, for killing his father. Dominic finished, his expression grim. 5 years ago, it was business, but Victor took it personally. He takes everything personally, I said. That's his weakness. He's emotional, reactive. He thinks he's playing chess, but he's really just lashing out. We can use that. Rocco looked at Dominic. She's not wrong. If we can make him emotional, make him sloppy, he'll make mistakes. And if the plan goes wrong? Dominic asked, looking at me. If Victor figures out you're wearing a wire? If something happens to you? The question hung there, loaded with everything we weren't saying. Because despite his anger, despite the betrayal, I could hear it, the concern underneath, the part of him that still cared, even though he didn't want to. Then I guess you'll have your revenge and your evidence, I said, trying to smile. Win-win. That's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny, I'm trying to be realistic. This is dangerous, I know that. But it's also the only play we have. Victor trusts me because I'm his sister, because he thinks family loyalty means something. Let me exploit that. Let me be the weapon you use against him instead of the weapon he uses against you." Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching my face, looking for lies, maybe, or looking for the truth underneath all the lies I'd already told. "If I agree to this," he said finally, "you follow my instructions exactly. No improvising, no heroics. Rocco will be running point on your security, and if he tells you to abort, you abort. Understood?" I nodded, relief flooding through me. Understood. "And Isadora?" He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne again, close enough to remember what it felt like when he'd pressed me against that door this morning. "This doesn't fix what's broken between us. This doesn't make us okay. This is business. That's all." The words hurt worse than I expected, but I nodded again. "I know." "Good." He turned to Rocco. "Get the tech team ready. I want the best surveillance equipment we have, and I want a full tactical team on standby. We move tomorrow night." Rocco nodded and left, leaving Dominic and me alone in the conference room with 6 months of secrets spread across the table between us. "Can I ask you something?" I said quietly. "When did you start following me? How many nights did you watch me at the club before last night?" His jaw tightened. 3 weeks. I followed you for 3 weeks, watching you transform into someone I didn't recognize. Watching you sing like your heart was breaking. I'd sit there thinking that maybe, if I could understand this part of you, I could figure out why you kept pulling away from me. "I pulled away because I was falling in love with you," I whispered. "Every time you looked at me, every time you found an excuse to call me to your office, I felt myself getting closer to a cliff I knew I'd eventually jump off. And I was right. Here we are, falling." "We're not falling together, Isadora. You jumped. I'm just trying not to hit the ground." The words were meant to hurt, and they did, but I deserved them. Deserved worse, probably. "For what it's worth," I said, gathering my notebooks. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For lying. For not trusting you sooner. For bringing Victor's poison into your life. I'm sorry." Dominic didn't respond. Just stood there watching me collect my evidence, his expression unreadable. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. "Isadora?" I turned back. "That song you sang last night. The one about longing for someone you can't have. Who were you singing about?" Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, all the walls were down. For a moment, we were just two people who'd found something rare and beautiful, and then watched it shatter. "You," I said simply. "I was singing about you." Then I left before I could see his reaction, before I could see if my honesty meant anything at all. Tomorrow night, we'd face Victor together. Tomorrow night, we'd either save Celeste and destroy my half-brother, or we'd all burn. Either way, there was no going back to who we'd been before. The next 36 hours felt like living in a dream where everything moved too fast and too slow at the same time. Dominic's tech team fitted me with surveillance equipment so sophisticated I could barely feel it. A wire thinner than hair woven into the seam of my dress, a microphone disguised as an earring, a panic button embedded in my bracelet. "Press it once for trouble, twice for immediate extraction, 3 times if you need us to storm the building," Rocco explained, his scarred face serious. "Don't be a hero, Miss Gray. Heroes get killed." I nodded, trying to memorize everything while my brain felt like it was short-circuiting. Dominic kept his distance, running the operation from the conference room with maps and blueprints spread across every surface. I'd catch him looking at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention, his expression complicated, conflicted. We were supposed to be all business, but the air between us crackled with everything we weren't saying. The night before the operation, I couldn't sleep. Just paced my room at the estate. Dominic had insisted I stay on the grounds for security, going over the plan again and again until the words blurred together. A knock on my door at 2 a.m. made my heart jump. Dominic stood in the hallway, still dressed, looking as exhausted as I felt. "Can't sleep either?" I asked. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, and he entered, his presence filling my small room. He'd never been here before. I'd made sure of that, another wall I'd kept between us. I've been thinking, he said, not looking at me, about what happens tomorrow, about all the ways it could go wrong. Rocco said the plan is solid. Plans mean nothing when emotions get involved. He finally looked at me. And Victor is emotional. You said so yourself. Which means he's unpredictable, dangerous. Which means you're walking into a situation where I can't control all the variables. I know the risks. Do you? He moved closer. Do you understand that if something goes wrong, if Victor suspects anything, he won't just kill you quickly? Men like him, men like us, we know how to make death last. We know how to make people beg. The raw fear in his voice caught me off guard, because this wasn't the mafia boss talking. This was the man who'd watched me sing, who'd fallen for me despite knowing he shouldn't. Then make sure your team is good enough that nothing goes wrong, I said quietly. My team is excellent, but you're the variable I can't account for. You're the one walking into that warehouse tomorrow, and He stopped, his jaw working like the words were physically painful. You what? I whispered. I can't lose you. The confession came out rough, almost angry. I know I should be able to. I know after everything you've done, all the lies you've told, I should be happy to use you and walk away, but I can't. And I hate that. I hate that you still have this hold on me. My breath caught. Dominic, let me finish. He ran his hand through his hair, agitated. When my brother died, I swore I'd never let anyone get close enough to hurt me again. I built walls, kept everyone at a distance, made myself into something cold and untouchable. And then you walked into my house with your professional smile and your secrets, and somehow you got through every single defense I'd built. I never meant to hurt you. I know. That's what makes it worse. You didn't do this to hurt me. You did it to save your sister. And I understand that. God help me, I understand choosing family over everything else. But it doesn't change the fact that trusting you feels like walking through a minefield. We stood there in the darkness of my room, close enough to touch but with everything between us. What if we survive tomorrow? I asked softly. What if we save Celeste and take down Victor and somehow make it out alive? What happens then? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I also don't know if I can let you go. That's not fair to either of us. Nothing about this is fair. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face in his hand. His thumb traced my cheekbone, gentle and devastating. You terrify me, Isadora. The way I feel about you terrifies me. I'm terrified too, I whispered. Of tomorrow, of Victor, of losing Celeste. But mostly I'm terrified that after everything, you'll look at me and only see the lies. That you'll never see the woman who fell in love with you so completely she'd risk everything to keep you safe. I see her, he said roughly. I see her right now. That's the problem. I can't stop seeing her, even when I should. He leaned in slowly, and I knew I should stop this. Knew we were crossing a line we'd barely uncrossed after this morning's confrontation. But when his lips met mine, soft and desperate and full of everything we couldn't say out loud, I kissed him back. It wasn't like I'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or sweet or romantic. It was raw and painful and tasted like goodbye. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I gripped his shirt like he was the only thing keeping me standing. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Promise me something, he whispered. Anything. Promise me you'll come back tomorrow, that you'll follow the plan, press that panic button if you need to, and come back to me so we can figure out what the hell we're supposed to do with this mess we've made. I promise, I said, even though we both knew that was a promise I might not be able to keep. He kissed me once more, softer this time, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. Then he left, disappearing into the dark hallway and leaving me standing there with my heart racing and my lips still burning from his touch. I didn't sleep at all after that. just sat by the window watching the sun come up over the estate, thinking about how 24 hours from now, everything would be different. Either I'd have my sister back and a chance at something real with Dominic, or I'd be dead and Celeste would die with me, and Dominic would spend the rest of his life thinking I'd betrayed him one final time. The morning of the operation, I put on the black dress they'd fitted with surveillance equipment, applied makeup carefully, trying to hide the fear in my eyes. Rocco gave me a final briefing, showing me exactly where Dominic's team would be positioned, what the extraction plan looked like if things went wrong. "You're going to be fine," Rocco said, and I almost believed him. Dominic stood in the doorway watching this silent. When Rocco left to coordinate with the tactical team, Dominic approached me. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can find another way." "There is no other way. We both know that." I straightened my dress, checked my reflection one final time. "Besides, I made you a promise, and unlike before, I intend to keep it." He pulled something from his pocket, a small silver pendant on a delicate chain. "My brother gave this to me the day before he died. Said it would keep me safe." He fastened it around my neck, his fingers lingering on my skin. "I need it to keep you safe. Now." I touched the pendant, feeling its weight. "I'll bring it back to you." "You better." His eyes held mine. "Because I'm not done with you yet, Isadora Gray. Not even close." Then it was time to go. Time to face Victor and end this, one way or another. Time to find out if love was strong enough to survive the truth. Do you think their love is strong enough? Drop your guesses in the comments, and if you're enjoying the story, like and subscribe. We appreciate your support. The warehouse in Red Hook looked abandoned from the outside. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, graffiti covering every surface. But I knew better. I'd studied the blueprints Dominic's team had pulled. Behind that decay was a fortress with armed guards, security cameras, and my sister locked somewhere in the basement. My hands were steady on the steering wheel as I pulled into the loading dock. I couldn't afford to shake now. Couldn't afford to let Victor see any weakness. "We have visual." Rocco's voice came through my earring, so quiet I barely heard it. "Team Alpha in position on the north side, Team Beta covering the exits. We've got you, Miss Gray." I touched the pendant at my throat once, Dominic's brother's pendant, and stepped out of the car. Two of Victor's men appeared immediately, the kind of muscle that existed to intimidate. They patted me down roughly, professionally, their hands invasive but quick. The wire went undetected. Dominic's tech team knew what they were doing. They took my purse, my phone, but left the bracelet with the panic button. "He's waiting inside," one of them grunted, gesturing toward a steel door. The interior was exactly what I expected. Concrete floors, flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of oil and rust. Victor stood in the center of what used to be a factory floor, wearing another expensive suit that looked absurd in this setting, like putting a diamond in a garbage dump. "Little sister," he said, smiling that cold smile. "Right on time. You've always been reliable, I'll give you that. I have what you want." I kept my voice flat, emotionless. "The security codes, the server access, everything. Can I see Celeste now?" "Business first." He held out his hand. "Show me." I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, the one Dominic's team had prepared, loaded with codes that looked real, but would trigger alerts the moment Victor tried to use them. Enough to hang himself with while thinking he'd won. Victor plugged it into a laptop one of his men held, scanning through files. I watched his face, looking for suspicion, for any sign he knew this was a trap. "Impressive," he said after a moment. "Very detailed. Castellano really does trust you, doesn't he? Or did before last night." My stomach dropped. "What? Did you think I wouldn't know he followed you to the club? That he saw us together?" Victor's smile widened. "I have people watching his estate, Isadora. They reported that you and Dominic had quite the confrontation yesterday morning. Raised voices, door slamming. Tell me, did he throw you out, or did you manage to talk your way back into his good graces?" This wasn't in the plan. Victor knowing about the confrontation changed everything. "He was angry," I said carefully. Jealous. I told him you were a business contact, someone helping me with a real estate investment. He didn't believe me at first, but I convinced him. Did you? Victor moved closer, and every instinct screamed at me to run. Because from what my sources tell me, you've been in his house ever since. Very cozy, very domestic, almost like you're planning something together. You're paranoid. I'm careful. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. There's a difference, and right now, I'm being very careful about whether my dear sister has finally decided which side she's really on. You have Celeste. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. You think I'd risk her life? I think you've fallen in love with Dominic Castellano, Victor said softly, dangerously. I think you'd risk everything for him, including your sister. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to prove your loyalty right now, or Celeste dies in the next 60 seconds. My blood turned to ice. Victor, please, call him. He released my wrist and pulled out a phone. My phone, the one his men had taken. Call Dominic and tell him to come here. Tell him you need help, that something went wrong. Get him into this warehouse, or I give the order to slit your sister's throat. This was it. The moment where everything either worked or fell apart. I could press the panic button. Rocco would send the teams in immediately. But if Victor's men were with Celeste, if they had orders to kill her at the first sign of trouble, she'd be dead before anyone could reach her. Or I could do what Victor wanted. Bring Dominic into a trap. Save Celeste by sacrificing the man I loved. Isadora. Victor's voice went cold. I'm not a patient man. Make the call. My hand moved to the bracelet, fingers hovering over the panic button. One press. That's all it would take. But then I thought about Celeste. 19 years old, innocent in all of this, locked in some basement waiting for a rescue that might never come. I reached for the phone. Smart girl, Victor said, smiling. That's when I heard it, a sound so faint I almost missed it. A click, metal on metal, the sound of a safety being released. Actually, a voice said from the shadows, I don't think she needs to make that call. Dominic stepped into the light, gun raised, pointing directly at Victor's head. Behind him, Rocco and 6 other men materialized from positions around the warehouse, all armed, all trained on Victor's guards. How? Victor started. You really thought you were the only one with people watching? Dominic's voice was ice. I've had surveillance on you for weeks, Victor. We knew about this. Location! We knew about your security setup. We've been inside your operation so deep you didn't even know you were compromised. Victor's face contorted with rage. The codes are fake. The moment you try to use them, every law enforcement agency in the state gets an alert with your location and enough evidence to put you away for life. We've got you, Victor. It's over. No. Victor pulled a gun faster than I expected, yanking me against him and pressing the barrel to my temple. It's not over until I say it's over. You want her alive, Castellano? Then you're going to let me walk out of here. I felt the cold metal against my skin, felt Victor's arm around my throat, cutting off my air. Dominic's expression didn't change, but I saw something flash in his eyes. Fear. Real, raw fear. Let her go, Dominic said quietly. This is between you and me. She's got nothing to do with it. She's got everything to do with it. Victor's arm tightened. She's my blood, my sister, and you turned her against me. You made her choose you over family, so now you get to watch her die the same way I watched my father die. Everything happened at once. I pressed the panic button 3 times, the signal to storm the building. Dominic fired, the shot so close to my head the sound was deafening. Victor's grip loosened as the bullet hit his shoulder. I dropped, hitting the concrete hard as chaos exploded around me. Gunfire, shouting, men running, Rocco's team engaging Victor's guards while I scrambled behind a concrete pillar, my ears ringing, my whole body shaking. Celeste! I screamed over the noise. Basement! Someone find my sister! Rocco split off with 2 men, Heading for the stairs I'd marked on the blueprints. More shots fired. Someone screamed. I pressed myself against the pillar, trying to make myself smaller, trying to stay alive long enough to know if Celeste was okay. Then Dominic was there, crouching beside me, checking me for injuries. "Are you hurt?" I'm fine." I grabbed his shirt. "Celeste." "Rocco's got her. We're getting her out." He pulled me to my feet as the gunfire died down. Victor's men were either dead or surrendering, hands raised, being restrained by Dominic's team. And Victor was on his knees, bleeding from the shoulder wound, Dominic's gun pressed to the back of his head. "You should kill me," Victor spat. "That's what you want, isn't it? Revenge for your brother? Go ahead, do it." Dominic's finger tightened on the trigger. I saw the war happening on his face, the desire for vengeance fighting with something else, something better. "No," Dominic said finally. "I'm not giving you a quick death. You're going to rot in a federal prison for the rest of your life. You're going to know that you lost, that your sister chose me over you, that everything you built is gone." "Boss!" Rocco's voice echoed from the stairwell. "We've got her! The girl's alive!" Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. Dominic caught me, held me steady as Rocco emerged with Celeste, thin, pale, traumatized, but alive. So beautifully alive. "Izzy?" Celeste's voice was small, broken. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." I ran to her, pulled her into my arms, both of us crying, both of us shaking. "You're safe now. You're safe." Over Celeste's shoulder, I watched federal agents pour into the warehouse. Dominic had been coordinating with them all along. They took Victor into custody, reading him rights he didn't deserve, leading him away while he cursed at all of us. The last thing he said before they put him in the car was directed at me. "You'll regret this, sister. Family is everything. You'll regret choosing him." But as I stood there holding Celeste, with Dominic watching us both with an expression I couldn't quite read, I knew Victor was wrong. For the first time in 6 months, I'd made the right choice. The weeks after Victor's arrest were strange, surreal, like living in a world where the rules had suddenly changed, and I didn't know how to navigate anymore. Celeste stayed at the estate while she recovered. Dominic insisted, said the house was big enough, said she needed security until all of Victor's associates were rounded up. Really, I think he just wanted to make sure we were both safe. Wanted to prove something to himself about who he was capable of being. We didn't talk about us, not at first. He was busy testifying, working with federal prosecutors to make sure Victor's conviction was airtight. I was busy helping Celeste heal, finding her a therapist, looking into getting her back into Columbia for the spring semester. But late at night, I'd find him in his office, and we'd sit in comfortable silence while he worked and I read. Nothing romantic, nothing resolved. Just existing in the same space, figuring out how to be around each other without the lies between us. One morning, about 6 weeks after the raid, Dominic knocked on my door while I was getting dressed. "I need to tell you something," he said, his expression serious. "Can we talk? In the garden?" My heart hammered as I followed him outside. The November air was cold, leaves crunching under our feet as we walked to the fountain at the center of his perfectly manicured gardens. "I've made a decision," Dominic said, not looking at me. "About my business, about who I want to be." "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm stepping away from the family operations, selling everything that's even remotely questionable to people who can handle it better. I'm keeping the legitimate businesses, the real estate, the restaurants, the investments. But the rest? I'm done." I stared at him. "Dominic, that's your entire empire. That's everything you've built." "It's everything my father built," he corrected. "Everything I inherited. But it's not who I want to be anymore." He finally looked at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes took my breath away. "You asked me once what would happen if we survived. If we made it through everything with Victor. And I didn't have an answer then. But I have one now." "What's the answer?" "I want to be someone you don't have to make excuses for. Someone you don't have to hide from your sister. Someone who deserves the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. He took my hands, his grip warm and solid. I want to be the kind of man who can stand next to you without dragging you into darkness. Tears burned behind my eyes. You were always that man. Even in the darkness, you were always. I wasn't. I'm not yet, but I want to be. He pulled something from his pocket. Not a ring, but a key. I bought a building downtown. It used to be a hotel, but it's been abandoned for years. I'm converting it into a shelter for victims of organized crime. People like Celeste who get caught up in situations they didn't choose. People who need a way out. Dominic, I want you to run it, he continued. You and Celeste, if she's interested. I'll fund everything. Operations, security, staff. But it needs someone who understands what it's like to be trapped. Someone who knows how to fight back. That's you, Isadora. I looked at the key in my hand, then back at him. Why are you doing this? Because you changed me, he said simply. Because loving you made me want to be better. And because if I'm going to ask you to take a chance on me, I need to prove I'm worth the risk. Is that what you're doing? Asking me to take a chance on you? I'm asking for a chance to earn your trust back. A chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve. No pressure, no expectations. Just time and honesty. And the hope that maybe, eventually, you'll forgive me for being so angry when you were just trying to survive. There's nothing to forgive, I whispered. You had every right to be angry. I lied to you for months, to save your sister. I understand that now. I understood it then, underneath the anger. I was just hurt and scared, and in love with you in ways I didn't know how to handle. He cupped my face gently, the same way he had that night before the raid. I'm still in love with you, Isadora. That hasn't changed, probably won't ever change. So the question is, can you love me back? The real me, not the mafia boss, not the man with power and danger, just me? I thought about everything we'd been through. The lies and the truths, the fear and the hope, the way he'd held me after we rescued Celeste, the way he'd testified against Victor without hesitation, the way he'd been quietly transforming himself into someone new while I watched. I never stopped loving you, I said. Even when you were angry, even when you had every reason to hate me, I loved you. The real you. The man who watched me sing and saw something worth protecting. The man who chose to save my sister even when he didn't have to. The man who's brave enough to change. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Not like that desperate kiss before the raid. This was different. This was a beginning instead of a goodbye. When we broke apart, both smiling, I heard clapping from the terrace. Celeste stood there grinning, looking healthier than she had in months, more like the sister I remembered before Victor took her. Finally, she called out. I was starting to think you two would never figure it out. Dominic laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected and beautiful that I couldn't help joining in. 6 months later, the shelter opened. We called it Second Chances, and within weeks we were at capacity, helping people rebuild lives that had been shattered by the criminal underworld. Celeste worked there part-time while finishing her degree at Columbia. She was good at it, patient, understanding, fierce when she needed to be. And Dominic? He transformed completely, built a legitimate empire that rivaled his old one, became the kind of businessman who created opportunities instead of taking them, who used his power to protect instead of control. We got married on a rainy afternoon in April, just family and close friends. No elaborate ceremony, no expensive venue. Just us, promising to be honest and brave and to choose each other every single day. For my vows, I sang, the same song from the night he first watched me at the club. But this time, the words weren't about longing for someone I couldn't have. They were about finding someone worth the risk, worth the fall, worth everything. When I finished, Dominic had tears in his eyes. I love you, he whispered. Every version of you. The one who lies to protect people she loves. The one who sings like her soul is on fire. The one standing here promising me forever. Forever, I agreed. No more secrets. No more running. Just us. And for the first time in my entire life, I believed in happy endings. Because sometimes love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better. Someone who sees your worst moments and chooses to stay anyway. Someone who proves that even in the darkest places, there's still room for light. Dominic was my light, and I was his. That was enough. That was everything. So here's what I learned through all of this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust someone with the truth, even when the truth could destroy you. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and being honest with someone else you love? How did you decide? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences might help someone else who's facing an impossible choice. And if you want more stories about love, danger, and the choices that define us, hit that subscribe button. Because next week, I'm telling you about the time Celeste fell for one of Dominic's security guards. And trust me, you're not ready for how that ended.